Good morning. I'd like to call the Government Contract Review Committee meeting to order. Kim, please call the roll.
Senator Boswell.
Here.
Senator Douglas.
Here.
Senator Yates.
Present.
Representative Chester Burton. Representative McCool.
Here.
Representative Pollock. Senator Meredith.
Here.
Representative Hart.
Here.
The minutes should reflect that a quorum is present and the committee is duly constituted to conduct business. So we do have several new members. Just would like to welcome the new members to the committee. Representative Beverly Chester Burton, Representative Bobby McCool, Representative Michael Pollock, and Senator Gary Boswell. So welcome to the Government Contract Review Committee. Pursuant to KRS 45A 705, Government Contract Review Committee members serve 2-year terms. So the committee chairs are elected by committee members, also for 2-year terms. Those terms have now expired, and new elections must be held pursuant to the aforementioned statute. Is there a nomination from a House member for the position of House co-chair?
Yes, I'd like to make a recommendation for Representative Hart as co-chair.
Representative McCool has nominated Representative Hart. Is there a second? Is there a motion from a representative member that nominations cease and that Representative Hart so be elected by acclamation?
I make that nomination, please.
Motion by Representative McCool. Motion being having made and seconded that nominations cease and that Representative Hart be elected House co-chair by acclamation without objection, so ordered. Is there a nomination from a Senate member for the position of Senate co-chair?
I would like to nominate Steve Meredith as the co-chairman of the Governmental Contract Review Committee.
Senator Boswell has nominated Senator Meredith. Is there a second?
Second.
Seconded by Senator Douglas. Is there a motion from a Senate member that nominations cease and that Senator Meredith be elected by acclamation?
I move that nominations cease.
Seconded. Motions having been made and seconded that nominations cease and that Senator Meredith be elected Senate co-chair by acclamation without objection, so ordered. So we have Senator Meredith as a co-chair and Representative Hart. Congratulations. And now, Chairman Hart, ball's in your court.
Okay, thanks. First item on the agenda is the consideration of the minutes of the December 13th meeting of the committee. Is there a motion that may be considered for the approval?
I'll make a motion that the minutes be approved.
The motion and a second has been made. Did we do a voice on it? Yeah. Clerk, please call the roll.
Senator Boswell.
Aye.
Senator Douglas.
Aye.
Senator Yates. Representative Chester Burton. Representative McCool.
Yes.
Representative Pollock. Present. Senator Meredith.
Aye.
Chairman Hart.
Yes. Motion carries. Total number of items on the agenda today is 274 in the amount of 29,799,839,418.73. All vendors are registered with the Secretary of State's office. Next order of business is consideration of the agenda, including the personal service contract list, the PSC amendment list, memorandum of agreement list, memorandum of agreement amendment list, Kentucky Entertainment Incentive Program agreement list, and the correction list, except for those items selected for further review. Do we have a motion to consider the contracts reviewed without objection?
So moved.
Second?
Second.
All those in favor, vote aye. All opposed, vote no. Clerk, please call the roll.
Senator Boswell.
Aye.
Senator Douglas.
Aye.
Senator Yates.
Aye.
Representative Chester Burton. Representative McCool.
Aye.
Representative Pollock. Senator Meredith.
Aye.
Chairman Hart. Chairman Hart.
Yes. Motion carries. Let's see. The first item on the pool list is with Council on Post-Secondary Education, is item number 2 on the routine PSC green list. The representatives are here. Please come to the table and identify yourself for the record. And I think Co-Chairman Meredith has some questions.
Hello, I'm Leslie Brown. I'm with the Office of Administrative Services. Melissa Bell.
Sorry, I'm Melissa Bell. I'm Vice President of Academic Excellence and Student Success.
Thank you, ladies, for joining this morning. But let me take a moment just to congratulate my co-chair on being elected this position. I thought maybe it would go 14 rounds, but
I was hoping 15, so I could set a record, but
obviously I missed that. But congratulations, and look forward to working with you as I have these many years. And I appreciate you ladies being before us this morning. Question I have regarding this contract is I received correspondence from Jennifer Fraker from your office about this contract, and I guess she has appeared before our committee before because she knows that I have a real aversion to contracts that are considered kind of sole source. And the scenario she outlined for me is that the original intent of this contract was to develop a program to assist students transferring from 2-year programs to 4-year programs. In her words, after exploring options, Council for Post-Secondary Education chose to work with the University of Kentucky and Dr. Greg, is that Hillman? Heilemann, to develop this program. And to continue with her explanation that the original primary estimates were that it would cost over $800,000, but the University of Kentucky could do it for significantly less. In fact, at this point in time, we've invested $180,000 in this project. The problem is that now Mr. Hillman has left the University of Kentucky. And again, in her words, University of Kentucky does not have the capacity nor the expertise to continue the project. He is now with Damar Systems, and it's imperative that we contract with them to complete this project. So my first question is, under her statement about after exploring options for this program, what were those options?
We reached out to a programming vendor that the state had on contract that we've used for other things. And I guess, and you'll have to excuse me because technology is not really my thing, but
makes two of us.
It sounds like when you are programming software, it's kind of like a work of art, especially when it's boutique software or something that's just this type of software. So the people we reached out to did not really want to just finish the project. They wanted to get into the project and kind of make their own mark and rewrite various pieces of the program. And through phase 1 of that project, I think we had received a quote that was almost $300,000 just to address phase 1. Well, that's more than we spent for the entire project to this point. And we are not flush with cash, and we just did not have that line around to spend. So we stopped the project, we put the project on hold, went back to the drawing board, and just tried to work up other scenarios of what we could do to just finish the project. And quite frankly, the intent of this contract is to, I don't really want to say sever the relationship with Damar Systems, but it is to complete the system and to train us on how to house the system from this point forward and make sure that we can maybe contract with graduate students or the University of Kentucky or Louisville or any post-secondary institution in the state to insert information into the system so we can get it back in our court.
So there really wasn't a formal RFP for development of this program?
There was years ago in the very beginning, and that predates me. And the RFP that came in was a few $1 million. I mean, it predates me. I've seen the number of 1.2 million. I've seen the number of 4 million, but I cannot say for sure because I was not part of that process.
I can appreciate that, but you know, in the technology world, it's changing at light speed, and I would suspect that possibly it could be less, significantly less than $1 million, 1.2 million, but we don't know because a formal RFP wasn't developed for this. So did you folks reach out to the University of Kentucky, or did they reach out to you regarding this?
We had, do you want to take that one?
So we were working with Dr. Heileman on some other projects, he had developed a similar system in New Mexico, so he had experience doing this. And so since we were doing other work with the University of Kentucky, we decided to work with him and get that same kind of system up and running in our state.
So was the contract with the University of Kentucky, or was it with Dr. Heuvelman?
It was the University of Kentucky, because through that contract, a lot of it was graduate students doing the work. So the way that contract was written is we were paying scholarships for the graduate students, work studies for the graduate students to write the program. The program is actually, it's written. What is not done is the information to backfill that program with 3 years of academic data has not been completed, and the testing of that data for break fixes has not been completed. So of this contract, it can be broken down. There's about $45,000 of it that's programming that we think will be used for the upload of data and any changes for testing. Now, outside of that, there is money set aside for $15,000 for hosting. It's actually not through this company. They would have to pay an AWS vendor to do that. We are looking at and working with COT to figure out how we can just pay that direct in the future. And then the rest of the contract is really worst case scenario for if when we are testing the program, things break or we have changes. We do not anticipate using that much of the contract, but we just want it worst case scenario of what it would be to finish this system.
And what was the total contract with the University of Kentucky for this?
The total contract was $300,000, and we had spent $180,000 before Dr. Heileman left.
Can you remind me, this contract is how much?
$97,000 in total.
So the balance of it. A couple things concern me about this. First being, he's working for the University of Kentucky, but it appears he's claiming some proprietary rights to this software, and I don't think should be. You know, not pretend to be an attorney here, but I've seen a few episodes of Perry Mason, and it just concerns me that you contract with the University of Kentucky for a product that's not finished. The person who developed the program goes to work for someone else, and now you're kind of held captive, and we got to work with him. It just doesn't pass the smell test here. You know, and it concerns me greatly that our largest research university in this state does not have the capacity nor the expertise to finish out this project.
Well, and that may be a misstatement, because I'm positive that if they put their heads together, there is expertise there. I think what it probably boils down to most likely is that to bring someone up to speed on the project and to have them learn the programming behind it and the code behind it was maybe more, I'm not going to say more trouble than it was worth, but more trouble than it was worth.
Well, maybe, but again, my biggest concern is, again, kind of claiming proprietary ownership of this, and I don't think that's right.
Well, and it's not an ideal situation, and the intent of this contract is to get out of this contract, because through part of this, we are trying to understand the code better. We do not have an IT department. During all of this, our IT department was consolidated with COT, and everyone we had working on the IT aspects of this were transitioned into COT. So we did not necessarily have the expertise to speak to the University of Kentucky and other people about how this should be written. So now that we've had time to regroup, we have brought some people on board. Actually, we do have a contract with the University of Kentucky, too, for other technology programs, where part of this contract is Dr. Heileman comes in and we review the code with these people, and then we take ownership of it.
And ownership is what I'm concerned about at this point. You had a contract, take all the personalities out of it aside. You had a contract to give you a finished product. You didn't get that. So to me, that's a breach of contract. I don't think this contract should be between you folks and the doctor. I think the contract should be from the University of Kentucky and this doctor to finish out this project.
And at one point we did try that. We did. And there were a lot of middlemen in the process. A lot of things were getting rewritten. quotes were coming back that were more than we were willing to pay. And then that
Well,
was...
there shouldn't be any quotes. So you have a contract with the University of Kentucky to give you a finished product. You don't have that. The burden should fall back on those folks, not you.
Ideally, yes.
Just to ask,
No, let him go.
just to ask a question,
Go
Mr.
right ahead.
Either one of you all could answer this for me, I hope. The program will provide students, faculty, and staff with enhanced tools to communicate degree requirements to students. Could you help me out on what enhanced tools means?
Absolutely. So right now, if a student wants to go to the University of Kentucky or Eastern Kentucky University, they would go to those separate websites, look through the websites, find the programs and the program requirements. What we do here is we take all of these degree plans, and degree plans being semester by semester maps of how do you get this bachelor's degree in 4 years. All of that is going to be in one place, so a student can look across universities and across programs. And in addition, we have career information and employment information linked to each one of these majors. So it is a planning tool for students, parents, and faculty and staff advisors.
May I ask just one more?
Yes, go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Co-Chair. Therein was the second question that you stimulated in me. When I went to college, back when they were still using papyrus to write on, I saw my faculty advisor twice. When I initially signed up for courses as a freshman, and on almost my last day there. Are we double utilizing the faculty advisor? Because what is the role of the faculty advisor if we're going to use these enhanced tools?
Well, I think it complements. So we're not trying to supplant the role of faculty or professional advisors, either one. This is for students who are contemplating going to a school, you know, sitting in their living room thinking, what is my next step? They can go in and talk to an advisor and have a little bit more information in their back pocket to better understand what each school offers and what they need to do and what previous coursework they can bring in order to complete a degree. So it's really just helping them be prepared for when they meet with an advisor.
Thank you, Mr. Co-Chair.
Senator Yates.
Thank you, Mr. Co-Chair. And really this is to follow up mostly on the chair. And I couldn't help it, my lawyer hat popped on into it. Has there been, has this been sent over to legal counsel to get us information on it before we take tax dollars and take care of it? If there, and again, I don't know what the contract is. There may be all kinds of loopholes, but if there is a contract and it's enforceable, well, then any additional costs that you may have may be recoverable. Is that something that has been looked into?
It has been looked into. And the contract, the way it was written, because graduate students were working on it as part of a work-study project, and because during the process of the writing of the application, the software application, the scope expanded. There was not much we could do. Plus, it was a pay-as-you-go type contract. Like, we only paid for students working on the project.
Okay.
And there were a lot of things outside of our control, mainly when our technology staff left and was consolidated. We didn't know what we were doing.
No, and that was, if I may follow up, that was just absolutely the question, because I do like that we try to use the grad student as much as we can. I think that's part of the wraparound educational service. Sometimes we get caught in bad positions, but I just want to know. Thank you.
Follow up. When this is all said and done, who's going to own the program?
The Council on Post-Secondary Education.
And what if it doesn't work?
Well, then.
Who do you go back to? You go back to University of Kentucky? Or do you
No,
go back
if it doesn't work, I think it. Well, you want to.
Well, I think we have built into the contract,
Yeah.
there's testing and fixes. So if there are any bugs or anything, it is part of the contract to fix those and make sure that everything is up and running.
It is also part of the contract that if any deficiencies are found that were part of any of other contract with the University of Kentucky, that this vendor cannot charge us any extra to fix those deficiencies.
Is there anything in the contract with Damar that specifically says that they do not have proprietary rights to this program, that is owned solely by the Council on Post-Secondary Education?
I would have to go back to our legal counsel to make sure of that, but I believe there may be, but I'll have to get back with you on that with our legal counsel.
Well, that's an important point to me because, again, it just, and this may be all above board. I'm not assuming that anybody is doing anything nefarious, but it just doesn't pass this smell test that I mentioned. You had a contract for finished product. It's not finished. The folks who you contracted with are not living at the commitment to finish it, so you gotta give it to somebody else. And who you're giving it to is the person who developed the program to begin with. And they're certainly going to benefit from it because now they're going to get a paycheck. It just doesn't look good. I'd have a much better comfort level if University of Kentucky recognized their contractual obligation to give you a finished product and let them contract with this company, and then it gets all wrapped up very nicely. They deliver it to you. You have ownership for it, and you can do these other things that you're talking about.
I don't disagree. I think when we looked at this was, given the past relationships and what we were up against, it was a way to involve ourselves even more in the process and to make sure that we had direct communication with the vendor to make sure it actually did get done and that we were the negotiators in the process.
And I appreciate that. I know what you're trying to accomplish. I'm not trying to be difficult, but again, I think this sets a very dangerous precedent for us. And is there a sense of urgency about this? If not, could we defer this for a month?
Well,
and you folks could have this conversation with the University of Kentucky, explain my objection.
The sense of urgency is we did want this up and running before the next school year, before August.
Well, the original plan was to have this up and running in February and absolutely completed with all bugs, fixes, all of that by June. So
mainly
I'm prepared for the next academic.
Mainly due to the fact that the users of this are students contemplating transferring schools, and right now is the time they're looking at transfer options.
Okay. That's all I have, Mr. Chair.
Okay. Any other Any other questions? If not, do we have a motion to consider the contract reviewed without objection? Got a motion by Senator Yates. Do I have a second?
What is your motion, Senator Yates?
The motion was to approve or review the contract without objection, basically to approve. With no second motion, contract. Do I have another motion for disapproval? Contract moves forward without approval or disapproval. The next item on the pull list are with the department. Thank you guys for coming. We appreciate it. The next items on the pull list are with the Department of Criminal Justice Training, and is number 5 on the routine PSC green list, and number 1 on the personal service contracts for $10,000 and under the goldenrod list. If representatives are here, please come forward and please identify yourself for the record.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. My name is Kevin Rader. I'm the Assistant Director of the Administrative Division at the Department of Criminal Justice Training.
I'm Chip White. I'm a branch manager over in-service training at the Department of Criminal Justice Training.
Good morning. My name is Nathan Goins. I'm legal counsel for the Justice and Public Safety Cabinet.
All right. Thank you guys for coming today. And I think Senator Meredith has some questions.
I do, Mr. Chair. Thank you, and thank you for being present. I really think I want to talk about obviously number 5 under personal service contract, but also there's another contract that deals with the same issue, I believe. Yes, number 1 on the personal service contracts for 10,000 and under. The first contract is with Jana Weiss, and the second is for Canaria Brown. And the contract descriptions are the same. It says provide funds for executive development speaker, the criminal justice executive development course on topics of leadership and diversity. I guess the first question I have is, does our Department of Criminal Justice have issues with diversity?
That course is not specifically on diversity. It's more on bias and how they affect our decisions, because what she teaches is that we all have biases, and that if we know what those are, we can more effectively make sure they don't influence the way we think about issues.
Then what's the component that's dealing with diversity? What's the intent of that?
Just so that we understand that not everybody comes from the same background. We all look at things in a different way, and that if we understand that, then it can make communication more effective.
With both these issues you've identified, though, are there issues within the cabinet or the department that suggest we need to provide this training?
This has just been something that's been requested by law enforcement leaders, that we have a component such as that in this course. This course is for executive development, so it's usually mid-level managers that might be moving in an upward trajectory in their agencies, and it's just something that has been requested in the past.
Well, what's the basis for the request? Are there numerous complaints regarding these topics? Do we have any data we can work with? And the point I'm getting is, I've always been in a position that every dollar we spend in this Commonwealth, there should be some return on investment, and I'd like to see the data that supports the recommendations for spending funds like this. So that's why I asked the question, are there issues? If there are issues, where's the data?
Sir, I'm not sure that I can say that we have specific data. I know
it looks like a solution looking for a problem, and I don't think that's how money should be spent. It should be to address issues, but again, without the data, there's nothing to support this contract, either contracts. Another question I have for you is, why are there 2 separate contracts?
The one contract for Dr. Brown is for the bias block. The other is for executive writing, so they're for different topics.
Would you like me to disapprove this contract today, or would you prefer to defer it and come back next month and possibly give me some better information?
We prefer to defer it, because we do think this is an important part of the curricula.
The Administrator, if there are no other questions, I'm sorry, Senator Yates does.
Senator Yates, go ahead.
Thank you. And this may be one that I can chime in a little bit burst on it. And I think that we have lots of information, probably not just in Kentucky, but enough where we've been have shown our ugly head several times in Kentucky, because the different racial disparities that we've seen in our criminal justice system repeatedly. It was one that the young lawyers we learn about early on. It's not something that may or may not. It's something that's been proven repeatedly, and we work constantly to try to fix that. I've worked in the Commonwealth Attorney's Office, at the Attorney General's Office. We've done the special prosecutions. I have prosecuted, I've defended, and it is very, very real. We know that. There's no doubt about that at this point. So, and I know that constant training is important, because we see that not only in all aspects of life, including this legislature, and we all work to try to improve that. So I know that the Commonwealth of Kentucky previously, in past decades, was a requirement that we had to take certain steps in order to do so. And I know that when we don't, when we see that we fall behind, we pay out quite a bit of money, tax dollars money, in lawsuits, right? I have 2 going right now in a civil case. So we asked why it would be important to do this training as it relates to making sure, and you expanded on it. I know sometimes these narrow definitions, they're kind of in a box. And I surely don't want you to testify to this committee and try to give, your job wouldn't to be the speaker. That's why you're hiring an expert to do that. So I know that you're not going to be able to get all to the ins and outs. But I remember it being very beneficial to me as when I was a prosecutor at the AG's office. Heck, it made me a better prosecutor because ultimately we're looking for justice. And so I appreciate you being here, and I'm hoping that answers some questions. I know, and maybe if you do have to come back, if we can come back with some of those statistics, just showing that how that's affected us, how we've improved that, and really what we really need to do to prove really the criminal justice system all in all in Kentucky, because ultimately if we are having those disparities, then we're failing. Thanks. Thank you.
Senator Douglas.
Thank you, Mr. Co-Chair. To follow up with Senator Meredith, I guess with his question of whether there's evidence that the training or the reasons for the training, I have a second question. Is there any evidence that this training over time has made an appreciable difference?
Well, I know when we get feedback after the class, when we've had this in the past, that everyone is always very appreciative of the training. They appreciate it. They like the way it's presented by Dr. Brown. So yes, as a matter of fact, some agencies have actually contracted her to come to their departments and train the entire department. So we have gotten very positive feedback from her training in the past.
Yeah. Just one follow-up, if I could, please. We talk about all these disparities, and we talk about certain groups, and I think it's rather easy to see that I'm probably technically part of one of those groups. Liking a particular program and liking how someone teaches the program and leaving and doing high fives after a program is presented is one thing. The problem with spending money is that when you spend money, it's gone. So liking something and seeing an appreciable difference long term are 2 different issues, or 2 different outcomes, I would say.
Yes, sir.
But once money is spent, it is spent, and that is a singular outcome. And I just want to express some concern in that particular area. I appreciate what you gentlemen are presenting here and what you're trying to do. I just want to make sure that we are using the taxpayers' money most wisely. But thank you. Thank you, Mr. Co-Chair.
Senator Yates.
Thank you, Mr. Co-Chair. Well, first of all, I would agree with my colleague that we need to be doing so much more on these type of things. I think that we need to be doing it. We want to make sure we're doing it in the best way. The other day that we had required sexual harassment training, this body, didn't hear anyone who would holler over whether or not we should have that type of training. But for some reason that the diversity training may be an issue. Training's a good thing, education's a good thing. I mean, I agree that we want to make sure that we're having the biggest positive impact, but I think it would be ignorant of all of us to say that it's not needed.
All right, any other questions? If not, we're going to need 2 separate motions, or need it because we have 2 separate contracts with 2 separate reports. So with that being said, do I have a motion on the... I'm asking for a motion, yes. I have a motion by Senator Yates to approve the contract reviewed without objection. Is there a second? All right, without a second, do I have another motion?
Motion to defer.
I have a motion by Co-Chair Meredith to defer. Do I have a second?
Second.
I have a second by Senator Douglas. All in favor vote aye. All opposed vote no. Clerk, please call the roll.
Senator Boswell.
Aye.
Senator Douglas.
Aye.
Senator Yates. Representative Chester Burton. Representative McCool.
Aye.
Representative Pollock. Senator Meredith.
Aye.
Chairman Hart.
Yes. This motion was to defer both items.
Yes.
Do separate, because they're separate lists. So that was the motion to defer green number.
Just for clarification, that was the motion to defer item number 5 on the PSC green list.
Item number 2 on the PSC.
Oh,
I'll make a motion to defer item number 1 on the personal service contract list for $10,000 and under.
okay. I have a motion made by co-chair Meredith. Do I have a second?
Second.
Second by Senator Douglas. Clerk, please call the roll.
Senator Boswell.
Aye.
Senator Douglas.
Aye.
Senator Yates. Representative Chester Burton. Representative McCool.
Aye.
Representative Pollock. Senator Meredith.
Aye.
Chairman Hart.
Yes. Motion moves forward, or contracts carry or move forward. Or, what, that was excuse me. Contracts that will be deferred to the next meeting.
Just a point of clarification, if I may.
Yes.
I know that for defer, there was a request that before that we brought to us. Can we just be clear? What is it that we're asking to bring to us? What's deferred?
Since I posed the question, I'll be glad to clarify that. I would like to see some information, some data that suggests that this is a priority for this particular department, that it is a priority for whatever reasons.
Yes, sir. The one speaker was a speaker for executive writing. It didn't have anything to do with diversity, but it looked like those were listed as the same topic.
Yes, it did. And unfortunately, that's all we have to deal with when we
Okay.
receive this.
Sir,
It's a capital
understand.
summary. And
Understand. Thank you.
thank you.
Thank you, gentlemen.
Did we cover both?
Are we good to move on? The next items on the pool list are with the Office of the Controller and are numbers 36 through 41 on the routine PSC green list. If the representatives are here, please come forward and identify yourself for the record.
Eric Friedlander, Secretary of the Cabinet for Health and Family Services.
Good morning, Veronica Judy Cecil. I'm Senior Deputy Commissioner for the Kentucky Department for Medicaid Services.
Yes, hi, I'm Wesley Duke, General Counsel for the Cabinet for Health and Family Services.
All right, thank you. I think Senator Meredith has some questions.
Good to see all of you again.
Good to
and
see you.
Happy New Year. I pulled these contracts because I think it falls under our committee's responsibility to examine the appropriateness of any exchange of resource or responsibility, and just for the committee's benefit. I know we have a limited amount of time here. Not going to belabor the point, but I want to do a little Medicaid 101. That in terms of payment, we have two programs. One's fee for service, but the majority of our expenditures are based on Medicaid managed care organizations. And just so everybody understands that with Medicaid, that program does not pay the full cost to provide care to Medicaid recipients. Is that correct?
I think there's been some really good work on the part of the General Assembly and the administration, particularly as it relates to hospitals and emergency service providers, where
it's going to be a long meeting.
I know it is. I know it is.
This path.
But
Let me ask it this way.
I think we've made a lot of strides in that area.
We do have reimbursement methodologies that cover the cost. It depends on the provider type.
Then let's talk in aggregate.
Yeah.
I mean, it's published everywhere
right.
that Medicaid does not pay the full cost of care.
Our reimbursement methodology is primarily relied on Medicare fee schedule. That's generally how Medicaid state agencies base their reimbursement.
And we can acknowledge that Medicare does not pay for the full cost of care either. I'm just an indictment
Yeah.
of anyone. I'm just
Yeah.
trying to go back and understand
This is
where we're coming from.
Oftentimes, from the provider perspective, certainly, what is said is that Medicaid pays for 70% of costs. Oftentimes, I've heard that a lot.
That's what I've heard
Yeah.
as well.
Yeah.
Now, with any business, if you're only paid 70% of cost, how do you survive?
Right. And the other side of that would be what we define as costs, particularly on the administrative side, which is also a part of these contracts. So I think it is what I like to. The way I look at it is, without Medicaid, you'd have so many more uninsured and no payment whatsoever.
You're going that way, but,
Yeah.
but again, you're not answering the question. If you can't recover your costs, and let's talk specifically about hospitals, since that's my background.
Right.
Now, this is just the way the program has been designed.
Right.
When Medicare and Medicaid started in 64, 65, we were supposed to pay 101% of cost. Over a period of time, we recognize that we can't afford this program, so we have to start defining exactly what costs are. And it's been redefined. Now we have a new model on managed care where we contract with insurance companies to determine whether the services are adequate, yada, yada, yada. But as a result, as you've already acknowledged, we're only paying 70% of cost. Well, we all understand that. So the expectation is that shortfall has to be made up somewhere. And that falls to the commercial pay insurance base. It's called cost shifting. It's been done for years. Again, not a indictment. That's how the system's supposed to work. It's kind of a hidden tax on people who have commercial insurance. So you make up that shortfall by passing on to commercial pay patients. You have to. We all have to acknowledge that. Otherwise, you can't be in business year in, year out, only getting 70% of your cost.
Correct.
Now, the real challenge is that rural hospitals see a disproportionate number of Medicare and Medicaid patients, and they have no one to pass that cost on, or a limited amount of ability to pass that cost on to anyone. So the urban centers have a whole lot better financial position than the rurals do.
Yes.
Right.
That's why I would encourage you all to pass legislation.
We're going to do that.
Outpatient. Excellent. Good.
Specific these contracts. Yes. Federal government only requires us to have 2 managed care organizations to contract with. We have 6. Why do we have 6?
Well, at the time, this was years ago, we have had 5. We've had more than 3 pretty much the whole time. The reason you have more is in case one gets financially insolvent. We've seen a lot of internal industry where one MCO eats another MCO. We've certainly seen that as well. So it is to give us some more options within our program so that we don't end up with 2 or 1 when the inevitable mergers occur.
Well, with 6 MCOs, we are in essence having 6 different set of rules as to how to provide care to patients. Is that a fair statement?
Yes, and we have started to address some of that with the single PBM and some partnerships that we've had with the General Assembly.
Well, all due respect, with a great deal of resistance. I don't think it should have to come from the legislature to begin with, but again, there's 6 different contracts, meaning 6 different set of rules. You heard testimony this summer from a lady who, a small provider, 5 employees, serve a 7-county area, that had an audit by an MCO, found no issues whatsoever, had an audit by another MCOs. She owes $25,000. They can't get it resolved. Same patients, same situations, but in one case, she owes nothing, and then she owes $25,000. The point I'm trying to make. 6 different set of rules. Does this place a disproportionate financial burden on rural health care providers?
I've certainly heard rural health care providers say that. Yes, sir.
So you agree or disagree?
There are a number of different you can see similar things on the private side as well as the public side. I know you have legislation to move back to 3. We have sat that out as it's moved through, and we'll continue to do that. So I understand your perspective. We've had many conversations on this in particular. I can see
at this
why.
point, I need my colleagues to understand my perspective.
Absolutely.
Because it goes back to, again, why do we have 6 other than, well, it's kind of a safeguard? I grant that, but from an actuarial standpoint, why do we have 6? Why not 7? Why not 8? Why not 10?
Those are all good questions. I don't think there's any magic number. And I really don't think there's any magic.
Well, just for comparison purposes, I think the state of California has 26 MCOs. But on a per capita basis, that means they see 1.6 million people. In Kentucky, we're half that amount. So why can California incur that financial risk, those MCOs, but for some reason Kentucky can't?
Well, there are 22 in California. Many states
26.
have more than. Pardon?
California has 26.
26. Many states have more than we do. That there is no question about that. It's like I say, that I don't believe there's
California's
a magic number.
population is
It's
obviously
huge.
much greater than ours. But again, on a per capita basis, they average about 1.6 million. We're about 800,000.
Right.
1.5.
1.5.
If they can incur the risk of 1.6 million, why can't our MCOs in Kentucky, particularly since all of them have a national presence?
It's an excellent question.
Well, if there's financial risk involved, which with insurance there's always financial risk involved, it looks like there's some room to run here, and we could get by with fewer MCOs. From the cabinet's standpoint, does it cost more money or less money the more MCOs you have?
I'm not sure it costs more money or less money. I think it is what we have to do in terms of oversight. Again, we've had that discussion before, the challenges of providing strong oversight. And I think you can make an argument that it's easier to oversee fewer. I think there's a good argument there. I think there's an argument that for competition among the MCOs, that having more provides some additional competition as folks try to influence members to choose their MCO. So, like I say, I don't believe there's a magic number. Certainly, I hear what you're saying. Other MCOs in different states handle a much higher number of individuals. Probably spreads their risk a little better than fewer members' lives covered in Kentucky by more MCOs. I believe there's a good argument on that side.
Well, obviously, the point I'm trying to make is that this creates an administrative burden that disproportionately falls to rural communities. That's, in fact, financially crushing rural communities. I'm very concerned about our safety net throughout rural Kentucky. Before the pandemic, rural hospitals had a return on investment of about a half a cent. That had dropped from 2 cents a decade ago, and now we have half of those hospitals that on the verge of possibly financial collapse. And it's just not the payment mechanism, but it's the extreme burden that we place on them from an administrative standpoint. It's great that the urban areas have the resources to address those things, but not rural Kentucky. And I've heard repeatedly in this committee and Health and Welfare Committee how important rural health care is to Kentucky, but I have seen nothing to evidence that rural health care is important. This is one way that we could do that, is reduce that administrative burden for people, like this lady who testified this summer on this. So, Mr. Chair, I'm not going to belabor the point, but I do not believe that 6 contracts is appropriate for Kentucky. I don't think it's a fair exchange of resources or responsibilities, and places a tremendous burden on healthcare providers, particularly in the rural arena. And every dollar we have to spend on administration of healthcare takes a dollar away from the provision of healthcare. I think one of the biggest tragedies we have in the state is the number of people we have waiting on our waiver programs for some type of treatment. And here's the dollars that could be used for that purpose. So that's my sermon for today.
Okay. Thank you. Senator Douglas.
Thank you, Mr. Co-Chair. And I'll try to be brief here, since this is the area that I've participated in for over 40 years. What research really has been done when we compare the different numbers of MCOs. Let's just use the two numbers, 3 and 6. Have there been any particular studies, any particular research done of it, given the structure that we have here in the Commonwealth, which one of these would be the most efficient? We have people who are experts in the field, and sometimes I hear them say, well, the legislators ought to take a look at this. Ho, 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 ho. I'm a doctor. I'm happy to look at the research in the medical realm, but I think the bankers ought to take a look at the research in the banking realm and some of the other realms. And we have a variety of people in our legislative body. So please understand that sometimes the General Assembly gets a little tired of being dumped on for doing other people's jobs. So the two questions, and I'll say both of them, either one of you all can answer. You can write them down if you wish. Has there been any movement on collecting data comparing whether in the Commonwealth of Kentucky 3 MCOs would be better or 6 MCOs would be better? Second question, I'm a little concerned about the comment of, well, we're kind of sitting this out. For some reason, we often look at the General Assembly should be active in all of these things and working in all of these things. But again, there are so many things that fall to the other experts in this area, because we certainly cover a lot of other areas. And I get concerned when I hear someone say, well, we're sitting this out, and all we're asking for is, could you please provide us some information in this area to give us more information so that we could make better guidelines? Because I know the three of you all care just as much about the people of the Commonwealth and the taxpayers in the Commonwealth and saving their money, or at least being good stewards with their money as we do. So again, to clarify the two questions, has there been any information gathered to compare the difference between 3 and 6 MCOs with regard to, I don't care what California's doing, with regards to the Commonwealth of Kentucky, and why are you all sitting this out? Thank you, Mr. Co-Chair.
So these are, first question, difference between 3 and 6. Has there been any studies done on the difference between 3 and 6 within the Commonwealth? There have been some studies done on managed care and its effectiveness within the Commonwealth, but not the difference between 3 and 6. Not the difference between adding another MCO or another MCO or taking one away. Within the context of this conversation, these were awards that were made to the MCOs years ago. It is currently in litigation. Actually, we awarded 5. A judge put in 6. So again, what I said was, and what I do mean is, we don't know of a magic number. We just don't. So I want to be clear on that. Secondly, that these are contracts and extensions of existing contracts, and I hope the General Assembly knows that I'm always willing to work with the General Assembly on what is best, and happy to provide perspective as well as what we learn and experience together. Veronica, do you have anything to add on the MCO? I don't know of any study on 3 versus 6.
Not for Kentucky specifically. The only thing we could do is lessons learned from other states. So there may be a national perspective. For instance, we do know that there's 5 states that limit to 3, but all other states have more than that. But we could certainly, for the conversation as to what is the right number, we can go back and take a look at that for the future RFP that happens for these contracts. I think it's a fair question. I will say that I think one advantage, and let me say, there's going to be strengths and weaknesses with each model. And so you have to make the decision of, what are you willing to settle for? Right now, providers have a little bit of a bargaining power to say, I'm not gonna be in this MCO's network, but I'm gonna be in this one's. And so they can choose to take the managed care organization's network or not. And when you go to limit the number of MCOs, you're potentially then, limiting the provider's ability to contract with the MCO. So I think, they also have more bargaining power because the MCOs are going to have the provider in the network. And that's what we tell providers right now. There is network adequacy requirements, and they have to show and demonstrate that they can cover the services for our members across the state. So, we always encourage providers to work with the managed care organizations and come up with a fair reimbursement to stay as the provider, as the part of the MCO's provider network. But legitimate questions, certainly happy to go back, and the only thing we could do, Senator, is look nationally and the lessons learned from states that have tried to limit.
Well, thank you very much. I appreciate your input. I think that as a provider, it really sounds good, but working with some of these MCOs is almost impossible in the real world. And we certainly would appreciate some of the input that you could give us. But I really thank you for what you're doing.
Senator Yates.
First of all, I thank the chair on this one. This is one that I came into this legislature very ignorant about, and I think that's one of the things we do is, sometimes this committee can seem like a you gotcha kind of thing, but really ultimately if we're working towards good government, it's a positive. And so obviously the information and knowledge especially about the rural care and those needed, it's something that brings to the table. And then my colleague also in his medical practice that brings something that I would always have a level of ignorance. I'm on the other side of it and trying to negotiate down these medical liens onto my personal injury practice. But I think that would be very helpful if we're looking at best practices, because that's when we're on the floor and we're arguing, it's really hard to make that determination. And I get that there's not going to be an easy number, but we could know what the overall cost and the impact is to reduce it down, how that cost savings, what that shift is. And I think that if we go in educated, I would imagine that the majority of the members would agree on if we have those numbers in front of it, if it makes us leaner, more efficient, but also protected in case they do gobble each other up. I think that's something that we can move forward. I know we have legislation come before us, and so I would appreciate it. And regardless of these particular items, if we could work on getting that information together, then we may conduct a little bit better. Thank you.
All right, seeing no other questions, do we have a motion to consider the contracts reviewed without objection? Got a motion by Senator Yates. Second by Representative Chester Burton. Sorry about that. I'm still trying to learn all of our new faces. All in favor, please vote yes. All opposed, please vote no. Clerk, please call the roll.
Senator Boswell? No. Senator Douglas?
No.
Senator Yates? Yes. Representative Chester Burton? Representative McCool?
No.
Representative Pollock? No. Senator Meredith?
No.
Chairman Hart?
No. At this time, is there a motion to disapprove the contracts?
Okay. Mr. Chair, if I could interject.
Go right ahead.
I understand the havoc this would create if these contracts are not renewed. My preference, Mr. Chair, is the committee just let the contracts proceed to finance without a motion. But I would hope it send a message that this needs to be addressed, because it's a serious issue. I've been preaching about it since I came to the Senate in 2016. And I want everyone to understand that I have nothing but respect for these people that sit at the table here. And I know they are as committed to providing quality health care as much as anyone. But I can't continue to let this can get kicked down the road and see our safety net fall by the wayside. So that's the position I would take, Mr. Chair.
Okay. Therefore, the contracts will move forward without a motion for disapproval. Thank you guys for coming.
Before you leave the table, if I could, please, Mr. Chair, just point of information, because it goes back to, this is related to contracts, and that's where are we with the fee-for-service PBM? We've deferred that time and time and time again, and I think the current contract with Magellan is going almost 10 years. I understood that we had an RFP. We were asked to defer action on that. We had another RFP. Where are we?
Could you please identify yourself for the record?
Yes, sir.
Okay,
I'm
thanks.
Astrid Masterson, Executive Director for Office of Administrative Services. We're currently in an open procurement for fees for service, PBM. So
We were 2 years ago, and that closed. We never heard anything. Why can't we bring this to resolution? Why do we let one vendor have a contract unchallenged for 10 years? That does not appear to be in the best financial interest of our Commonwealth.
I don't disagree with you, Senator. And it is an open procurement. We are hopefully close to nearing the end of that. That's all I can say right now with the open procurement, but it is hopefully here soon coming to a resolution.
Well, I think the previous bid period was in 2022. Why couldn't we act on that particular RFP?
I think there was an error. I believe there was an error with the procurement, and it had to be reissued out. I can follow up with you.
But I don't think it was issued out. It just the process died, and we have to extend the contract. So a lot of questions about this. I'm not going to hold you to it today, but just we need to bring some resolution to this. It doesn't look good.
Yep, I don't disagree with you, and hopefully we'll have resolutions soon.
Thank you.
But I'll look on the previous stuff.
Appreciate it. Thank you, indulgence, Mr. Chair.
All right. Thank you, guys. The next item on the pool list is with with Personnel Office of Secretary and is number 42 on the routine PSC green list. If representatives are here, please come to the table and identify yourself.
Good morning. Good morning. My name is Sharon Burton. I'm the Commissioner of the Department of Employee Insurance at the Personnel Cabinet.
Thank you. I think Co-Chair Meredith has some questions.
Me?
Again?
Thank you for being here. In the capsule summary we received, it makes reference to Senate Bill 178, which was what drove this. We're talking about specifically the Employee State Health Plan and doing an audit of prescription drugs.
Correct.
And the price we have here is $500,000. I think specific to the amendment on this bill that created this, that they would be paid no more than 30% of the savings. Is that correct?
That is correct. The way they are paid is 30% of any realized savings from their work that they do.
So with $500,000, someone projecting that we're going to save $1.7 million.
We hope more than that. So there's really not a good baseline for what that number should be. So we did negotiate that number with the company, and they feel comfortable with it, with the understanding that if we realize more savings, we'll be back in front of you asking for more money for this contract so that they can get their 30% of that savings.
And I think probably $1.7 million is a conservative number, but it's a savings for the Commonwealth.
Correct.
But to that end, this is just one part of that. Why do we not do the same thing for the medical claims?
The medical claims, they go through a number of audits. They have both internally at our TPA as well as independently. They have someone come in and do audits of claims. That's not exactly true on the pharmacy side. There are some audits that are done on the pharmacy claims, but it's not a one-for-one pharmacy versus TPA. And I would say to you there are a lot more checks and balances on the TPA side.
There are, but how many? We're not doing a 100% review.
Not 100%, no.
Couldn't we do a 100% review?
I have not researched if there is an entity out there that does 100% claims review.
There are. I can show you there are. And just for the committee's benefit, that studies are showing that 80% of medical claims have some type of error. And of those 80%, 28%, the error is overcharging. So again, potential savings to this program. So that's something we need to look at. But that's all I have, Mr. Chair. If no other questions, comments, I'll entertain a motion, or I'll make the motion to approve.
Motion by Co-Chair Meredith, second by Senator Yates. Clerk, please call the roll.
Senator Boswell. Yes. Senator Douglas.
Aye.
Senator Yates. Representative Chester Burton, Representative McCool,
Aye.
Representative Pollock, Senator Meredith,
Aye.
Chairman Hart.
Yes, motion carries.
Thank you.
Thank you. The next item on the pool list is the University of Kentucky and is item number 44 on the routine PSC green list. If representatives are here, please come to the table and identify yourself. And once again, I think it's co-chair Meredith has some questions.
Good morning, Mr. Chairman. I'm Bart Harden. I'm the Director of Government Relations for the University of Kentucky.
Good morning. Barry Swanson. I'm the Chief Procurement Officer for the University of Kentucky.
Good to see you, gentlemen, again.
Happy New Year
to you. Glad you could join us yet one more time. And I would think that you probably knew that I would pull a consulting contract, and particularly Deloitte Consulting, because they seem to do a lot of business with our Commonwealth, which is kind of interesting in its own right. But this is a $1.7 million contract, and it's the description is to help kind of organize the grants that have already been received and maybe identify opportunities for new grants. And congratulations, says you've seen a 40% increase in grants expenditures over the past 5 years. Just curious as what the, if this is an administrative component, what's the total amount of grants that UK receives?
Sure. I'll start and then you can fill in, Barry, if that's okay. Back in 2017, we were generating about $300 million of research grant expenditures. As of the end of fiscal 22, that number is now over $500 million of research grants that we have generated in expenditures. That is the reason for the need for this. We did an RFP some 18 months ago, roughly, to start looking at this. Deloitte, we RFP'd it. There were more than a dozen firms that responded. Deloitte won the RFP. They spent $300,000 or $400,000 coming up with an overall plan to revamp all of our federal grants processes, from tracking to administration to reimbursement to audits, every aspect of federal grants that we have to report on. It's a very cumbersome process, and across a big enterprise, it's a big undertaking. But since we have increased by this magnitude, it was essential that we come in here and revamp our process, because we hope, fingers crossed, that we'll continue to grow at this rate and increase those federal research grants and dollars as we continue to move the university forward. But that's the need for this. It is just a enterprise part of the university that has grown exponentially over the last 5 years.
And that's why I asked for the number. 1.7 million is relatively small in many administrative expense, but again, if we'll watch the pennies, the dollars take care of themselves. Just curious, of those 12 replies you had to the RFP, was Deloitte the lowest bid, or wink wink the best bid?
No, they were actually both. We had 19 we solicited 19 suppliers, 4 responded, and they were selected by a committee, and they happened to be low and the best as determined by the committee.
That's a winner in my book. I appreciate that. That's all I have, Mr. Chair.
Okay, I think Senator Yates has a question.
First of all, thank you for being here. Congratulations on the increase. I know that's something that we had set goals of years ago, and continue to reach that at several of our universities. So it's Kentucky's doing good things. Just in comparison of best practices and showing my ignorance, and hopefully somebody else is on the same boat with me onto it, is that's very common on any of these type of large projects like that, to contract it all out, not to have anyone in-house?
Actually, we're contracting out the piece to develop it. Once this is developed, we will be doing it all in-house, is my understanding.
Okay, so the 1.75 million, and I get it's proportion to the overall grant. It's a small comparison, but that is only to get it developed. But then it comes back in-house.
That is development and implementation, and then once it's implemented, we will run that entire program in-house
and own it.
Yes, if there's a software component of it, yes.
Thank you.
Okay. Senator Boswell and then Senator Douglas has a question.
As a follow-up to Senator Meredith's question, I think it would be helpful to me as a new member if I look at these sheets sometime, and I think he had a very good question, and that would be helpful to me if there was some notations in these remarks indicating that there were 12 RFPs, people that responded to your RFP. This was the lowest cost and evaluated bid, for example, and then that would eliminate the need for me to ask the same question that Senator Meredith asked this morning.
Okay, Senator Douglas.
Thank you, Mr. Co-Chair. And I just have a very quick question. I know I keep saying that. The information that will be provided to you and developed and provided to you, my question here is that information then proprietary information for the University of Kentucky and owned by the Commonwealth?
Yes, sir.
Thank you.
Okay. There's no other questions. Do we have a motion to consider the contract reviewed without objection?
So moved.
Second.
Motion made by Senator Boswell. Sorry about that. And the second made by Co-Chair Meredith. All in favor, please vote aye. All opposed, please vote no. Clerk, please call the roll.
Senator Boswell.
Aye.
Senator Douglas.
Aye.
Senator Yates. Aye. Representative Chester Burton. Aye. Representative McCool.
Aye.
Representative Pollock. Aye. Senator Meredith.
Aye.
Chairman Hart.
Yes. Motion carries. Thank you, gentlemen.
Glad to give UK a win this week.
Might be the only one we get.
The next item on the pulled list is with the Attorney General and is number 1 on the PSC Amendment Ivory list. If representatives are here, please come forward and identify yourself for the record.
As a Louisville fan, I appreciate that comment. Blake Christopher with the Attorney General's office.
Stacey Woodrum, Attorney General's office.
All right, thank you guys for being here, and I think Senator Yates has some questions.
Thank you. I couldn't let the chair be the only one. Hey guys, first of all, thank you for being over here. This one jumped out. Earlier I talked a little bit about our background and knowledge, and for me, having been a previous Assistant Attorney General, I always looked at these things, and it wasn't just this contract. It was back in June at a meeting here, we passed over 3 other contracts. It was about $280,000 for the outside conflict counsel and then for disciplinary actions as well. And then I saw this one come back before us, and so that would be $300,000 for the next 2 years that we'd have out there. And I didn't remember that ever being an issue when I was at the AG's office. And so in my law office, next door to me, that rents a space from me, is one of the former deputy AGs. And so I asked him what his thoughts is, and he said, I don't think that's right. And so that's what brought it to me. So this particular one looks like it's going to increase from $40,000 to $60,000. And the contract description is almost the same in each one of them. This one in particular just says to renew the contract to retain conflict counsel to litigate and advise in cases which the office has a conflict under the rules of professional conduct is needed. And so what a lot of people who aren't familiar attorneys, we know that if the professional conduct is needed, that's usually a disciplinary action with the bar. And the conflict, we used to just do conflict searches in there like I do in my office. So got me looking a little further, and so I started asking, and I've gone through this, and it looks like that we've spent $1 million of taxpayers' money over the course of the administration. So I pulled up and this is, I can only go back looking at it. I know that's what I did too, the same thing. That's a lot of money. But I found it was entered to 15 contracts for conflict and bar disciplinary counsel with 5 law firms. So it was a total of $980,000. And I got to break down the contracts, but this other $20,000, it's $1 million of something that when I was there, I thought we kept it in-house. Now I know there can be some issues with litigation, but if you just explain to me what's going on.
Yeah, thank you for the question, Senator. What I can do is speak to the contract that's at issue here in terms of the aggregate, contracts that you have questions about. We can certainly dig into that and follow up with you after the fact. But this is a contract for the last 12 months. I think it was for $20,000. We've asked for another $20,000 the first year, which would bring the contract total to $60,000. Again, this is for conflict counsel. What happened was we had a flurry of cases that came in right around the latter half of last year that all came in right around the same time. And we looked at those cases and made the decision that it would be a conflict of interest for our office to represent some of the defendants in those cases. The two cases that are pulling on this contract, both are federal court cases, and so as I think most folks here would agree, like, it's a little bit more expensive to litigate right in federal court than elsewhere. And one of those cases is with a pro se plaintiff who has filed a 142-page complaint.
Okay.
And so that case in particular is a little bit more expensive than usual. The $20,000 that contract that those two cases are pulling on isn't completely spent yet. We want to be proactive as opposed to retroactive, right? There's about $8,000, I think, left on that contract, but we can certainly foresee that with two federal court cases pulling on it, that's going to get spent fairly quickly. And so we wanted to be proactive and try to come before the committee and ask for an increase in this before it was an emergency situation.
If I may continue to follow up. Okay, and so, I'm really proud of my time as Assistant Attorney General, but we weren't paid a whole lot, and I know you guys do a lot of work for a fraction of what they do in private practice. And first of all, thank you for that at the AG's office. I mean that, and that's one of the reasons I brought this up, because I still have a whole lot of close friends over there working tirelessly. And so, when I'm looking at a total of $1 million that's been paid out, and I'm thinking about the individual salaries that are being made, and I also thinking that the area of experience, I know you said this one, but we have $300,000 right now that this committee has put out there for the next 2 years for bar disciplinary actions and for conflict, which I thought we could do a conflict search, know what you do it, and then I guess for the litigation. So me just looking at it, and maybe it's just written up wrong, so maybe we can get back to that, but if there's bar issues and it's in the scope of employment, I can understand why that would. But we would never defend someone for a bar issue or disciplinary action outside of their scope of employment. Is that correct? Taxpayers wouldn't pay to defend a member of the AG's office for disciplinary actions that are outside the scope of employment.
My understanding in KRS 12, I think, is that is one of the exceptions, right, from when the governor would have to, defend a state employee is if it's outside the scope of employment. So, but again, I think to your question about the aggregate, I can follow up with you offline about that. But the two cases that are pulling on this contract that's at issue are both conflict counsel, where our office made a determination that would be a conflict of interest, right, for us to represent all the parties involved. And so we had to send some folks out to conflict counsel. And my take is it's why we have this contract. Right?
So we have people at this table that have been there for the entire administration. Is that correct?
That's correct.
And so you've seen every one of these come through as part of that. So we would know that this is happening over and over again.
Again,
correct?
To speak to the aggregate, we can pull the reports to see what's been spent. We often put contracts out so that attorneys are in place to be able to do these cases, and we don't assign cases, and there's not expenditures. So I would have to go back to pull those exact numbers to see what's been expended on all those contracts.
And that's all public, so I was able to actually just pull it online, and that's how I got it quickly. We're short-staffed over here, and I had to pull out my old legal beagle and try to do some of it myself. And so just flipping through, but right now $300,000 out with another one. Is there a reason we wouldn't use that particular firm if we've already have $300,000 that's sitting out in the manual to be able to have these exact things as having 15 different outside firms doing this for us?
We put this out for an RFP for multiple vendors so that if there's other conflicts that arise from the vendors that receive the award, that we're able to, flow those cases as they need to be so that they're expedited.
Okay. And my final question, Mr. Chair, is again, I'm not initially attacking this one. It just, like you did when I said it's been $1 million aggregate, everybody gulps and says that doesn't seem right. So to me, it was a little bit, and maybe those numbers, maybe it was we approved it, we continue to approve it, maybe it's not spent, but that's something this committee needs to know. And then I'd like to know how it's been spent, and I'd like to know if it is for disciplinary actions. If we're spending $1 million in taxpayer or whatever that amount is, I'd like to know what those bar complaints are, what that action is, and how we can nip that in the bud, because that's not something I remember being there happening. Would you mind getting that to me, please?
Can do that, sir. Yes.
All right. And again, I'm not against this particular contract. I understand sometimes, and I got several federal cases right now. They're always a little more time intensive. So thank you for your time.
Okay. Thank you, Senator Meredith.
Just a question for Senator Yates. I appreciate your line of thinking there. I thought the same myself. On this committee, we see so many contracts for legal services by various cabinets. I've often wondered myself, is there an opportunity to kind of gather all that together, see how much we're actually spending in total, maybe redirect those funds to the AG's office? After all, you're representing the state of Kentucky. Maybe there's a better way to do that. I'd be curious as to how much we're spending legal services for every cabinet and every branch of government, because I think we would be astonished at that. I know it's substantial. If there's some way we could do that, or possibly we need a task force, Senator, that just looks at the AG's office in relationship to our cabinets and so forth. But we spend a lot of money, and it's scary sometimes. So that's just.
I completely agree. I haven't been there. There is so much talent that has been there for decades at the Attorney General's office, institutional, civil, and criminal, chief law enforcement officer of the state, obviously, and there's so many individuals. And to part of me, that's one of the reasons I'm being a little stern. I'm very seldom pull these, and when I do, I usually don't actually go to committee. I usually call over, or I can look up stuff myself, take an hour and figure it out. But this one, I started thinking about how many friends that I have over there that are working for a very modest salary, and then I'm watching $1 million taxpayers' money being spent out of the AG's office hiring these firms. So I really appreciate if you can get me an answer to that.
Again, we will, to make sure that $1 million is expenditures.
I would agree. We have a wealth of talent and experience over there, and I would think maybe some of the questions are asked at the cabinet level, even of external folks. The information's already there. We can just reach out and gather that, but that's something you and I need to work on later, but I think there's some real potential here. I appreciate you bringing this up.
All right, thank you. Senator Douglas.
First of all, I want to thank Senator Yates for the education that I've gotten this morning in this particular arena. I really appreciate that. Actually, Mr. Co-Chair, I want to offer a motion that we consider deferring this particular contract until we have an opportunity to look at some of the aggregate conflict management expenditures. It's really something that I need to learn more about, but it seems that if we're having some issues in this area, one of the things that helps prompt people to be more prompt is to shine some light, or at least put pressure in that particular area. My concern is that continuing to approve these contracts doesn't get us that information any more quickly. So I make a motion that we defer this contract until we're able to get more information to this particular committee.
Okay, Senator Douglas has made a motion for deferment. Do I have a second?
Second.
Second by Representative Chester. Thank you so much. I will get that before the day's over. By Representative Chester Burton. All opposed vote A, or all in favor vote A. All opposed vote no. Clerk, please call the roll.
Senator Boswell. Yay. Senator Douglas.
Aye.
Senator Yates.
Aye.
Representative Chester Burton. Aye. Representative McCool.
Aye.
Representative Pollock. Aye. Senator Meredith. Aye. Chairman Hart.
Yes. Motion carries. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Next item on the pooled list are with the Kentucky Employers Mutual Insurance, and is number 30 on the PSC Amendment Ivory list, and number 3 on the personal service contracts for $10,000 and under on the Goldenrod list. The representatives are here. Please come forward and identify yourself for the record.
My name is Tim Feld. I'm General Counsel for Kentucky Employers Mutual Insurance.
Okay, and I think Senator or Co-Chair Meredith have a question.
I want to start by expressing my appreciation to Senator Yates for allowing me to have a break here. It's greatly appreciated. Let's start with the the personal service contract for under 10,000. This is close to $10,000 contract, and Kimi has had the mortal sin of asking for a retroactive start date approval. Appreciate you being here. Also appreciate your letter. I'm not sure how many of our committee members, if any, had were privy to this, but the explanation giving, and I thought it was interesting that you said as part of Kimi's robust procurement processes. Well, wasn't sure what that adjective meant, but it says strong, healthy, and vigorous. Well, if you follow it with that an employee obviously failed to follow procurement, I'm not sure that's supports your position that this is a robust procurement process. A couple things bother me about this is first, for this contract, was there an RFP?
No. It was. They are small maintenance contracts of $1,000 or $2,000. Our procurement policy does not require an RFP in this situation.
So where's the cutoff?
Well, and Senator Meredith, let me clarify. The RFP for the real estate, the move of the real estate, there was an RFP. And our procurement policy is there's different thresholds depending on whether or not it's a service or supply. In this situation, under $10,000 for this service, it would not fall underneath an RFP situation. It would be a multiple bid situation. And in this situation, we didn't have the opportunity. And if I could go a little bit further,
please.
We were moving our Lowell office to a smaller office location. Our goal was to reduce costs and expense to Kimi. As part of that process, the individual in charge of the move failed to anticipate all of the maintenance requirements that would be involved in moving from one office location to another. The individual was informed by the landlord that all items would need to be removed from that old space. They were told this in the middle of May. The lease ended at the end of May. So we were in, because of poor planning and a mistake, we are in a situation where we either violate the procurement policy and have the landlord do the work and remove the cubicles and remove the fire suppressant units, and then we have to retroactively sit in this chair and admit our mistake and admit our error and file this retroactive. It was a mistake. It's been addressed with the individual. We've learned this. We've taken this situation. We gave our annual procurement training to the entire company. We highlighted this area. We again reiterated our zero tolerance for procurement mistakes. And I am sitting here. There's no one more upset about me this happening, Senator Meredith, is me, because I'm sitting in this chair for someone else's mistake. But I'm gonna own it. And what I'll do is I'll promise you that it will not happen again.
Well, I certainly take you at your word, but I want to make sure that we've got all the answers and the answers to the questions about this. This isn't a great deal of money, but in terms of breach of internal control procedures, it is significant. And if we make a mistake on 10,000, do we also make a mistake on 100,000 or on $1 million? I note that this was for a period of July 1, 2021 to June 30, 22. When was this mistake discovered?
It was discovered in the middle of May. When we were told you have to do these things, we have a new tenant moving in on June 30th or June 1st, that there was enough time to follow the process and follow the procedures. And at that point, we had two choices. One was to pay additional month's rents, which would have been an additional $20,000 to $30,000, depending on how long the process took, or violate the procurement policy.
I appreciate it. I don't think you understand my question. Is, again, this happened June 30th, 2022. Why weren't we informed in July 2022 or August 2022? When was the mistake? If it's a mistake, when was it discovered?
It was discovered in May. We found out about it in May. After all of the work was done, there was 4 different small vendors used as part of this work. We wanted to make sure we had all the invoices, all the names, and we want to make sure we had all the details before we came before this committee. Instead of coming in, as you know, we have 2 of them in front of this. We wanted to make sure all the work was done properly, paid, and that it was we had, in essence, all of our ducks in a row before we came before this committee.
I guess that leads to the second contract where we're asking to increase of $3,000 for a total of $6,000. Did they miss an estimate or?
Senator Meredith, there were 4 different vendors that did work. 3 of them completed it in the prior budget year. This event and this work occurred afterwards. I think it occurred in I want to say August. It was removal of the fire suppression unit, and as a result, because the work occurred in the July 1st, 2022 budget cycle, we submitted a second PSC.
How was this particular firm selected?
The landlord chose all of the vendors. It's less than ideal.
Less than ideal. It's like, hey, I got a cousin who can do this, so yeah, it's. I know you're quite sincere in your position that this has been addressed, and I appreciate that. You've always taken our position on these things seriously, and I appreciate that greatly. But
I understand.
Hope you understand and respect.
When I filed it, Senator, there was no doubt that I would be sitting in this chair today.
Yeah. Well, did you look forward to that?
My sleep watch said I got about 3 hours sleep last night, so no, I did not.
What a coincidence, me too, but for different reasons. Another question is, Mr. Chair, I'll make a motion to approve both contracts, or do we need 2 separate? I'll make a motion to approve whichever contract you want to go with first.
Co-Chair Meredith made a motion for approval of contract number 30. It's on the PSC amended Ivory list. It was the first contract that we spoke about. Do I have a second? Second by Senator Douglas. All in favor vote aye. All opposed vote nay. Clerk, please call the roll.
Senator Boswell. Aye. Senator Douglas.
Aye.
Senator Yates. Representative Chester Burton. Representative McCool.
Aye.
Representative Pollock. Senator Meredith.
Aye.
Chairman Hart.
Yes. Motion carries. Now I need a motion for item number 3 on the personal service contract for 10,000 and under the goldenrod list.
So moved.
Motion by co-chair Meredith. Do I have second by Representative Pollock? All in favor vote aye. All opposed vote no. Clerk, please call the roll.
Senator Boswell.
Aye.
Senator Douglas.
Aye.
Senator Yates. Representative Chester Burton. Representative McCool.
Aye.
Representative Pollock. Senator Meredith.
Aye.
Chairman Hart.
Yes, motion carries. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much.
Next items on the pulled list are with the Department of Education, and our numbers 35 and 42 on the routine MOA pink list. Please come forward and identify yourself for the record.
Good morning. My name is Karen Worth. I'm the director in the Division of Budgets and Financial Management.
I'm David Cook. I'm the Director of Innovation in the Office of Continuous Improvement and Support at the Department of Education.
Good morning. Carol Ann Morrison. I'm the Director of the Division of IDEA Monitoring and Results at the Kentucky Department of Education.
All right, thank you guys for being here, and Co-Chair Meredith has some questions.
I do, Co-Chair Hart. Thank you. Yeah, I think my questions are the same for both contracts I requested pulled, but we'll start with 35. This is for $107,000 to carry out the activities of a grant that the KDE has received, a federal grant. Looks like it's a 6-month engagement. What's the total amount of that grant?
$3 million.
$3 million.
And this is also a reduction, Senator.
Excuse me?
This is a reduction, and this is before you because we reduced the amount because this was for a full year, fiscal year, and the person's only working didn't start until December. So the amount of the contract now is only $57,987. So it's being reduced by.
Well, if it had been a full year, would it have been $214,000?
No. The amount that's on what I'm looking at on the screen is what the full year would have been, but we took not quite a little more than a half a year, so we reduced it to 57,000. So, and the other thing you should understand is this is a 4-year grant, so this person will be paid that. So the 107 is actually what would happen in the second, third, and fourth year. That's a full year salary plus benefits.
107,000 divided by 4 years?
No, 107,000 is an annual salary for the person and a 4-year grant. So the total is that amount times 4, if you want to look at it that way.
Okay. How was this particular person selected for this project?
It was an open, we posted the position and interviewed for it.
Posted how?
Through our mechanisms at the Department of Education, through our employee posting, just like we would post any other job.
So what experience does this person bring to this particular grant?
They have a really interesting background of being both an educator and a human resources specialist. So they've had experience in project management in addition to being a teacher.
And how was the salary determined?
It was a calculation as part of the application process for the grant.
Well, on both of these, I guess this is where we struggle is, we get very limited amount of information. And for this one in particular, where it looks like for a 6-month period, because it's what ours says, that you get $107,000, we're reaching salaries that most of our constitutional officers don't even make in Kentucky.
The salary, just for your benefit, the salary is $73,000.
Okay.
That's an annualized salary.
But the other information we didn't have is the amount of the grant. If you get a grant for $200,000 and you're paying out $107,000 for administration, then it just doesn't jive. So that's why I asked the question. So appreciate that education. And Mr. I don't have any questions about either of these contracts.
Seeing no questions, do we have a motion to consider the contracts reviewed without objection? Senator Yates, I got a motion by Senator Yates. Do I have a second?
Second.
Second by Co-Chair Meredith. All in favor vote aye. All opposed vote no. Clerk, please call the roll.
Senator Boswell.
Aye.
Senator Douglas.
Aye.
Senator Yates. Aye. Representative Chester Burton. Aye. Representative McCool.
Aye.
Representative Pollock. Aye. Senator Meredith.
Aye.
Chairman Hart.
Yes, motion carries. Thank you all so much.
Thank you.
The next items on the pulled list are with public protection are numbers 68 and 69 on the routine MOA amendment. It's the yellow list. If representatives are here, please come forward and identify yourself for the record.
Good morning. My name is DJ Wasson. I'm Chief of Staff at the Public Protection Cabinet.
Okay, thank you so much. And I think Senator Meredith has a question on this.
Yes, I do. On both contracts, the issues are the same. It's not really an issue. I mean, maybe it's just for education, but each are for $4 million.
Correct. That's the total contract amount.
So we'll expend that total amount on each of these projects?
We're certainly hoping to. This particular amendment has increased the amount that we provide to families that have been impacted by the tornado to build a new home. The original amount was $40,000, which was based on proposals we received from these nonprofit companies about the cost to build that home. I'm sorry, do I need to do this? Those figures were from March, and costs have simply gone up. So we're increasing that amount per home to $100,000. In talking with our nonprofit builders, there is definitely still a need for homes. So we are hoping to expend that $4 million.
Yes, I understand the inflation situation. I understand the supply chain situation, but this is a 150% increase over what we originally projected. And I've seen inflation, but I haven't seen this kind of inflation.
It is, and I'll be on. I mean, I think there's costs for HVAC systems, cost for the supplies to build. HVAC seems to be the one we hear about the most. What I can tell you is when we originally talked to the companies, the nonprofits in March, they gave us an estimate of $40,000 per home. They actually have given us a little higher, about $120,000 per home right now. We think probably with some other opportunities we can get that to $100,000, but that is actually the cost we're seeing to build these homes.
So it's $4 million. Is it a pool that hasn't been expended yet?
Correct. These are committed funds. This is from the Team Western Kentucky Tornado Relief Fund. That's the private donations that came in. We committed $16 million to build homes in Western Kentucky. These are 2 of those contracts, so this is half of that for those nonprofit builders. So yes, they have not been expended yet, but they're earmarked for those homes.
I assumed as much, but the effective dates is July 1, 22 through January 15, 2023.
Correct.
That's not
No,
correct.
That was the initial contract period. We wanted to reassess the needs. When we first started these discussions, we weren't that far outside of the tornado, trying to see what the needs would be. Would people fix their own homes? Would insurance cover that? Would there be other funds to provide? That would be there be other charities helping to build those homes. And so now we are sitting down having those talks, and we do expect to extend that. So
All right. Thank you. That's all I have, Mr. Chair.
Any other questions?
Motion to approve both contracts.
All right, we have a motion to move the contracts for review without objection. Motion made by Co-Chair Meredith. Do I have a second? Second by Senator Douglas. All in favor, please vote aye. All opposed, vote no. Clerk, please call the roll.
Senator Boswell. Aye. Senator Douglas.
Aye.
Senator Yates. Representative Chester Burton. Aye. Representative McCool.
Aye.
Representative Pollock. Senator Meredith.
Aye.
Chairman Hart.
Yes, motion carries. Thank you so much. Thank you. The final items on the pulled list are with the CHF, Department for Aging and Independent Living, and is number 3 on the MOA for $50,000 and less. It's the gray list. Representatives here, please come forward and identify yourselves for the record.
Good morning. My name is Victoria Elridge. I am the Commissioner for the Department for Aging and Independent Living.
Hi, I'm Marnie Mountjoy. I'm the Director of the Division of Quality Living.
Hi, I'm Amy Metzger. I'm the Division Director for the Division of Finance Administration.
All right, thank you all. And Senator Meredith has a question.
Thank you for being here this morning. And under the agreement description, it says provide funds for lesbian, gay, bisexual, transgender, LGBT competency training and consulting on LGBT aging issues. Just educate me a little bit. What aging issues are specific to this population that doesn't affect all of our population?
That's a great question, Senator Meredith. The Administration for Community Living, which is is the primary federal funding to our department, has identified that LGBTQ older individuals that we have to engage in outreach, and this contract ensures that we comply with that requirement set forth. Additionally, the Administration on Community Living has identified this population as the greatest social need population, so we're meeting that requirement.
And how did you gather that information?
That came through federally. It is a federal recommendation.
It's a federal recommendation, but I'm talking specific to Kentucky. Again, I'm looking for data here to support spending $12,500.
What we know is that 8% of Kentucky's population has been identified as LGBTQ, and we know that we are one of the fastest aging states in the nation, and we want to ensure inclusion with the services that are provided in individuals' homes.
But where's the data that suggests they're not being properly cared for and being included, specific to Kentucky?
What we do know is that this training has not occurred, so there isn't data to state that.
I've been here a long time, but it's still my same position that it looks like a solution looking for a problem. And what if it's not a problem? You've spent $12,500 that possibly we didn't need to spend.
So with that, the Administration on Community Living has identified that this population is of greatest social need.
How did they identify it? Specific to Kentucky?
Specific to Kentucky, I can get back to you with
We need to.
that data and that specific information. I can share with you that this is a training that has not been delivered before. So this will be the first time. So we can definitely, within this training, there is a pre and post assessment to identify where needs are previously and then compared to afterwards.
Would you have a problem deferring this contract then and bring that back to us next month?
No.
Okay. Before we move forward, Senator Yates has a question.
First of all, thank you for being here. I came on the Metro Council back in 2010, and I remember that had started doing some studies with outreach when I was on the council very early. And I think back then a lot of times with especially older people who are part of the community, there was a even higher sense of bigotry and just outright hate that they had experienced, and so that was part of the worry about how do you outreach. And there had been studies, and while we would be ignorant of us to think somehow in Kentucky that they would get less of that than you would in some other places, but we did know that a lot of times it was harder to get for health outcomes, to get care, to get social programs and things. And then our colleagues in Fayette County in 2012, they did do their health department. They put a study together and published to do that because they were kind of following us, but they were trying to also make sure that those services could be better provided in outreach, because we know it's very, very real, and we know that whether it's that we have a lot of different programs and things that are available for people that in the event they don't use it, they go to waste, but also especially with health outcomes, when people aren't using it for a prolonged period, those costs get bigger and bigger. So it seemed that not only was it the right thing, but it also saved taxpayer money in the long run, especially with health care and other things as well. And so to me, it has been done. It's been done throughout the nation over and over again. And I'm always about saving dollars, look at best practices. So if you say, I don't want to reinvent the wheel. So if there's been several studies that have been done all over, including Fayette County 2012, I wouldn't want to tell you, say, hey, can you go spend a couple $100,000 to do the same study here to see if it works? If we know it works, let's implement it, let's move forward. One of the good things about, at least we try to talk about being so far behind the rest of the nation in so many things. Kentucky, we're slow to act on a lot of things. They say if the world ends, I move to Kentucky because you got another couple of years.
Mark Twain, yes,
yeah,
sir.
That's right. I kind of twist it my own way, but this is one thing we've seen this other places, so we know that's been put in place. We know that it works, and I'm glad that we're implementing it.
Thank you.
Okay. We have a motion to defer by Co-Chair Meredith. Do I have a second?
Second.
Second by Senator Douglas. All in favor, vote aye. All opposed, vote no. Clerk, please call the roll.
Senator Boswell.
Aye.
Senator Douglas.
Aye.
Senator Yates.
Nay.
Representative Chester Burton. Representative McCool.
Aye.
Representative Pollock. Senator Meredith.
Aye.
Chairman Hart.
Yes. Go ahead, Senator Yates.
When we defer, I always like to know what I'm looking for coming forward. But I would ask you, when you do bring back to share with this committee, I'm Google searching things and trying to pull back up, but the Sage of the Bluegrass Needs Assessment Survey of 2015, as well as some of the Fayette County things. And again, I don't think it's bad, because I think part of this committee is it's educating us and continue to do that. So not a bad thing, as long as it's nothing that has to be done right away. So if you could, and obviously the chair, whatever he specifically asked for, but I think some of that material may be helpful. Thank you.
And if I may ask a question,
Go ahead.
Senator Meredith, what specific information? I understand Senator Yates' request for Sage of the Bluegrass, the needs assessment. Is there anything in addition? Are you looking at Kentucky specific data as far as how many LGBTQ older adults there are, or what specific data can we bring to you?
We're not talking about the quantity of people. We know that it's 8% of the population. I can't deny that. But you're trying to train people to address problems. What are those problems and how they've been identified?
Okay.
I don't know why this particular segment of the population is so distinct from everybody else. You know, it looks like if we've got health problems, we deal with health problems. We have housing problems, we deal with housing problems. Not that specific to somebody's sexual orientation or their color or political affiliation is, why are we doing this?
Yes, sir.
I know in the cabinet you folks work in, every cabinet is screaming for dollars. And one of the things that COVID has shown us is that we have tremendous weaknesses throughout our social network. And we've got to make assurance that we're spending every dollar to its utmost return in terms of benefit to the Commonwealth. So that's what I'm looking for.
Yes, sir. Thank you.
Okay, thank you all so much. Please take a moment to review committee members to review item number 11 on the agenda, which is an exemption request. And if I could, is there a motion to approve the same? Motion by Senator Meredith. Do I have a second?
Second.
Second by Senator Boswell. All in favor, vote aye. All opposed, vote no. Clerk, please call the roll.
Senator Boswell.
Aye.
Senator Douglas.
Aye.
Senator Yates. Representative Chester Burton. Representative McCool.
Aye.
Representative Pollock. Senator Meredith.
Aye.
Chairman Hart.
Yes. Before adjournment, I want to announce the February 2023 meeting will be Tuesday, February the 14th. It will be upon adjournment of both chambers. So, motion to adjourn. We stand adjourned.